Thank you. Welcome to our Adobe Users Group meeting. My name is Cornelius Chopin. I'm one of the co-managers of the Austin Adobe Users Group. We meet monthly, the second Thursday, most of the months of the year, second Thursday of the month, and we talk basically not all, but a lot of the products from Adobe, mainly Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Premiere, and After Effects. Those are the major applications that we cover in this users group. I know I'm missing something. About our website is located at AustinAdobeUsersGroup.com. If you'd like to visit it to see what training we have available, previous videos, as well as upcoming videos, upcoming training on our website. So it's AustinAdobeUsersGroup.com. And with that in mind, I'm going to get started. We typically last around an hour. This is part one, I think, of a two-part series on smart objects. Okay, and I don't know how many of you guys know what a smart object is. Can somebody tell me what a smart object is in Photoshop? Can anybody want to take a stab at what is a smart object in Photoshop?
That's a good question. I'm going to say that it's a virtual representation,
okay,
of an image or an object, whatever that is, so that it's. I know that the function of a smart object is that it will not destroy your original.
Good. I like that. And that's keyword there. It's non-destructive. That's a very powerful term when it comes to video editing, particularly when using Photoshop. Can anybody else want to take a stab at what is a smart object? Because be honest with you, one of my little quotes, I'm known for chauvinism. A smart object will make you smarter. How you like that? Okay, and that's a true statement.
Or don't you have to be smart to use a smart object?
No, you don't. That's a good point. You don't have to be smart to use a smart object. You could be dumb and use a smart object. Okay, because it's easy to use if you know how to use it. And that's the key, is if you know how to use it. And a lot of people don't take advantage of making some layers in their document smart objects. Okay, so let me give you what my definition is. Got some notes on another screen here. And we'll talk about, in fact, I'll tell you what, let me do this. Let me see if I can share my screen with you guys. I always seem to forget to do that. I get so excited about talking. And I just forget.
Okay, we're starting to see your screen.
Okay, so let me just pull over my other screen. Notes. This is my notes that I'll be talking from. And so we're going to talk about smart objects. Again, I think there's going to be a two-part series on smart objects. So there's two different types of smart objects that you can create in Photoshop. You can create a inside, and I use the easy word for it. For you geeks, you want to use the term embedded smart object, or you can use the outside version of a smart object. And for you geeks, we refer to that as a linked smart object. We're gonna be talking about an embed today. Maybe next month we might be talking about the link version, because you can do even more with the link version of a smart object. So let me unpack both of them. So the question is, what is a smart object? Well, the first version, that embedded or inside version, smart object, and it's in essence the original Photoshop file, that's the PSD file, right here, the PSD file rather, that's copied into another file called a PSB, Photoshop Big, that is used to preserve the original bitmap or vector data inside of the original file. So basically, you're taking two files. You have one file, it's making a copy, and it's kind of embedding it inside of that file. So anytime you make any changes and you need to go back to the original size or whatever, we'll see that in a minute, it can reference that original copy and restore it back to its original glory. And we'll see that in one of the examples that we're going to be talking about. So the first version of the smart object, basically the original file, Photoshop file, PSD file, that's copied into another file, PSB file, that is used again to preserve the original bitmap. We'll be doing bitmap today, but you can also do vector. okay, data inside of the original file. This is the most common method. Now, next month, we may be talking about another type of smart object, which is called a linked smart object. This is a smart object, but it's outside of the file, okay, but it does basically the same thing. It preserves the original data, bitmap or vector, outside of that file, outside the original file. And again, it's used to, typically used to shed design assets rather across multiple files. When you're doing comps and you want to change out pictures or text without having to redo thing over and over and over again, well, a smart object that's linked outside, and you'll see an example of that maybe next month, why that can be useful. So the question
Cornelius, may I interrupt?
Yeah.
We've had a couple of questions in chat.
Okay, go ahead.
More recent question is, what is the linked file called? Is that the PSB?
Both of them are PSD. Yeah, this should be, yeah, both of them PSB. B as in Photoshop big.
Right. Okay, and then the other question was, right now your text is a nice viewable large size, but the tabs at the top of your screen are so small they're indecipherable. Is there any way that can be zoomed?
Yeah, I can't increase this. Yeah.
Can you just explain to us what those are? Are those
No,
different
this is, I'm
slides
in Word. Yeah, this is Word. So this is, you know, how you bold, italic.
different screens you have ready for the presentation.
Yeah, so this
Got
is up at here. You don't have, you know, that's basically.
We don't have to worry about them.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that. That's just
Thanks
a
a lot.
word at the top. So the question
Sorry
is,
for the interruption.
not a problem. So why convert, and I got layers of misspelled there, a layer to a smart object? And the key is, anytime you want to be flexible, or as you mentioned, Karen, non-destructive, and that's one of my favorite words, by the way, in Photoshop. So anytime you want to be flexible, layer that is, to be flexible or non-destructive, converting it to a smart object is a great idea, a great thing to do. The problem is many people don't take advantage of this feature and miss out on all of the benefits. And we're going to see there's a lot of benefits of using smart objects within Photoshop. So when it comes to transforming images, we're going to see an example tonight of that, why that's so important. When you're creating comps, we're going to use a billboard, right, as a comp, right? We're going to see that why it's so important to use a smart object to do that. And then when you're doing things like reflection, right, instead of having two things creating a reflection, is one object embedded inside of the other one. When one changes, they both change. So I could change the text and the reflection to change as well. That's going to be, again, I believe, in the next session. But there's about at least 6 good reasons to create smart object. We're going to cover about 3 tonight, 2 or 3 tonight, and pick up the next in the upcoming month. So if a smart object is created inside of the original file, the file side object gets larger, which kind of makes sense, right? If I'm putting a file in a file, it's going to be bigger, right? So let me illustrate that. And so I'm going to open up Photoshop, and I have it open already. And let me go to this and open up the files in advance of the class. And I'm going to zoom in just a bit, give you all my senior citizen view of it. So I got this image, and if let me move this thing out of my way. Yeah. Okay, I got this image that I want to be able to make a smart object. I got all these screens. I want to make a smart object out of. Well, let's see. Hold on just a sec to make sure that I'm not skipping anything.
Cornelius, Sherry is asking whether you can make the graphical user interface text size bigger by changing the screen resolution. It's possible to make it bigger on a wide screen.
Yeah.
To me, it's nice and legible.
I'm not sure how to do that. There's probably a way of doing that. I'm on a Mac, and I probably got a high resolution screen, and that's the reason why it's probably appearing small.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure how to do that, but I'll see if I can figure that out sometime.
Okay,
But yeah, I'm not sure how to do that right
thanks.
now. Okay, so I want to go in and let me see if I got this. Yeah, right here. So I got this model right here, and notice this size right now is 136 kilo. Okay, that's not the Photoshop one. So I tell you what, let me do this. Let me go back to Photoshop. And this is the file right here. It's model one before JPEG. So I'm gonna save that. So I'm gonna do a file, save as. And I'm gonna do this as, I'm gonna call it AAUG because I know that's where I'm saving it into. So let's hit save. And I'm click OK. So let's see what the file size on that image is. There's 136 kilobytes, right? That's the size of it. So let's go back. And what we want to do, I don't know why I have that size because I got a bigger size than the other one. I'm not sure why that one's that small. Oh, that's because it's not Photoshop. So let me do file, save as a PSD file. Photoshop file. Now, when I save this, you can see that that file size is 1.1 meg. You guys see that? That was a JPEG I was looking at. So this is the actual Photoshop file. So I want to kind of establish a base before we go forward. So with that in mind, let me go back to Photoshop. And so let's convert this object to a smart object and see what happens. So the way you convert an object to a smart object is you select the layer that you want to make a smart object, and you select convert to smart object. And when you do that, notice it creates this little icon right there. That's your dead giveaway that that object is a smart object. So now it's been converted to a smart object. You see the reason for that in a bit. And then you have the option to convert it to a link. We'll talk about that next month. Or convert it to a layer, or edit its content. So there's things you can do once you create it and make it a smart object. And it's created inside of this layer right here. Layer 0, because that's the name of the layer, .psb. Now we're gonna do some other things later on. But what I wanted to show you that if you save this file again, go back to the file manager, notice the file size went from 1.1 to 3.3, right? So because you got a file in a file, right? And it's going to obviously increase the file size, but you'll see the reason for that in a minute. That's the first thing you want to note, that when you do create a file size, take note that it will increase, and rightly so, right? Because you're putting a file, original file inside of the original file, okay? You're encapsulating it, that's a technical term, inside of a shell, as it were. So I'm gonna do a Control Z a couple of times, see if I can, to undo that, get back to my original image. And now let's look at how to create a link object. Now we'll talk more about link objects and what they can do and what the benefits of link objects is, but to create a link version of this, you first have to convert it to a smart object, because you just can't convert to a link object. You got to convert it to a smart object and then push out that smart object as a link file. So if you first convert it to a link object, a smart object rather, and then when you select it again, now you can convert it to a link. Okay, so it's a two-step process. So now when I convert it, it's going to prompt me to save it as a file with, whatever I want to call it. I'm going to call it linked. And let me just put it somewhere. Let's see, I'm on my desktop. Users group meeting, exercise file. Let's put it right here with the rest of that stuff. And I'm gonna hit save. Now that file is linked back to this file. And notice the icon changed from that smart object icon to the link icon, okay? So that's the way you link a file as opposed to embedding a file. Now, we'll see more about that later on when we do some linking and the advantage of linking smart object as opposed to inside object embedded object. So I'm gonna do Control Z a couple times to get back to the original image. And now we're going to really see the advantage of using smart object when it comes to different types of transformation, okay? So anytime you know you're going to scale an image up and down several times within an image, within Photoshop, you better convert that to a smart object, okay? And we'll see that in just a minute. So let's prove that fact that smart object will preserve the original data, okay? So the way we're going to do that is we're going to make 2 copies of this background layer. So I'm going to do Control J, you know that, right? If you use Photoshop any time, Control Command J. And I'm going to name this first one Smart Object. And I'm going to name this I'm going to name this first one Original. Doesn't really matter, but I want to name that one Original. And I'm going to name this one Smart Object. Okay, so the exact same image, right? And then I'm gonna turn this bottom layer off. So what I want to do is I want to create a side-by-side comparison of the original image versus the smart object image. So, but I don't have enough space on my canvas currently to do that. So there's a solution for that. If you go up to the image menu and do canvas size, you get this canvas dialog box that allows you to change the size of the canvas, hence the term, right? But I don't want to be doing pixels, right? I'm gonna do percentage because I can work with percentage a lot easier, right? And so what I want to do is increase the width to 200% because I'm gonna put a side-by-side comparison of those 2 objects, those 2 images. So I'm gonna do 200% instead of 100. So when I click OK, let me move this over so you can see what it did. It basically made the width, only the width, because that's the only one I changed, to 200%. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to move, and anytime you want to move something, you always use the move tool. Remember, that's key. I'm gonna hold on the shift key. Remember what the shift key does, always constrain something along a certain axis. In this case, the x-axis. If I hold on my shift key, let me just zoom out of this a little bit. Okay. So you can see that better. I'm gonna hold down my shift key and I'm gonna push that over to that side. Okay.
Hey, can I ask you a question, Cornelius?
Yeah.
So when I move stuff in Premiere Pro or After Effects, and I'm moving it with the cursor, and then I want to constrain it to X or Y by holding the shift key, I have to, and sometimes when I teach, I see people have that problem. I have to start moving it first and then add the shift key.
Right.
If I hold the shift key down and try to move it, it won't move.
Exactly, because you want to
Same in
kind of
Photoshop?
constrain, you kind of get the ball rolling. And likewise, when I do this, I hold on the shift key. Now, right now, it's moving both of them. Okay, so I need to make sure I got the right layer selected because golden rule is what selected gets affected, right? So I'm gonna hold on the shift key and I'm gonna move the other one. Now, again, if I Control Z, and I'm gonna turn this bottom layer off. So basically I have a copy of both images, the exact copy of both images. This is the smart object. I'm gonna click on it. This is the smart object, and that's the original. You can see I got highlighted. So we click on that. That gets smart object get highlighted, and this one is the image. Okay, yeah. So the shift key is going to basically constrain it. I think there may be a setting that you can set whether or not you hold it down or not, because they've changed some things about transformation inside of Photoshop. But yeah, that's true. I think in After Effects and Premiere. So now that we have these two objects, these two images, excuse me. Let's go in and scale those two images down to see how they behave. But before I do that, I need to make this a smart object, okay? So I'm gonna right click as I did earlier and select convert to smart object. So now that image is a smart object and this is the original. Now I want to select both of the images, so I'm holding on the shift key again. Shift key is your friend, right? Shift key allows you to select multiple objects, right, in most programs. So I'm holding on, I'm selecting both layers so I can scale them together. So I'm gonna do Control key, a Command T, a Control T, and that's the free transformation tool, right? And I'm gonna hold on the Alt or the Option key, depending upon if you're on the Mac or the PC, and I'm gonna scale it all the way down, like so. And then I let go of the mouse and let go of the keys, right? Now, to commit a transformation, you can either do one of three things. You can double click on it. You can come up here, and this thing is in my way. You can click on that checkbox at the top there.
Cornelius,
then
can you
you
make
could-
your
you could-
view zoom in a little, because the image you're showing us is teeny.
Yeah, I want it to be teeny because that's
Oh,
that's
okay.
that's the purpose of it. Because I'm gonna zoom it back out in a minute.
Okay.
So I zoom out both of the image at the same time, the same scale, same resolution, whatever, but I hadn't commit the transformation. Again, three ways to commit the transformation. You can commit it from here, you can double click, or you can hit the enter key, pick your pill, okay? I like the enter key because I'm right there, or I like to double click because I'm on, my hand is already on the mouse, so it's just best for me to double click to commit. So now those two images had been scaled down to teeny weeny. You probably can't see it, but it's a small image. Now, watch what happens. And this is where the magic begins. I'm gonna scale it back up and let's see what happens. So I'm gonna do a Control T again. Make sure both of those objects are still selected because we want them to be affected together, right? So I'm gonna do Control T again. Hold on the Option key because I want to scale from the center. By the way, how useful is the shift key rather and the option key? So I'm holding on the option key and I'm gonna scale from the center, as opposed from the edge, and I'm gonna scale it back up to its original, at least close to its original size. Now, you might say, what? It's pixelated, right? Isn't that what you're saying? Man, that's an ugly picture. That's what I know what you guys are saying. Okay. Well, again, I have not commit the transformation. Anytime you scale, anytime you use the transformation tool, Command and Control and T, you got to commit it before it becomes effective. Again, you could either click here, or use the enter key, whatever tickle your fancy. I'm gonna double click, bam. Can you guys tell the difference between these two? Can you see any
what are you
difference?
talking about? Sorry,
Huh?
of course. I said, no, what are you talking about?
Okay, I see what you're talking about. Okay, now I did it one time, so let's do it a couple more times to see what happens. Okay, so I'm gonna do the same exact thing a couple more times. Do Command T. You guys get it down by now. Hold on the Option key. I'm gonna scale it down. I'm gonna double click to commit. Command T. Hold on the Option key. Scale it back up. Double click to commit. I'm gonna do it one more time. Command T. Hold on the Option key. Scale it down. Double click to commit. Command T. Hold on the Option key. Sound like a broken record now, don't I? Raise it back up. Double click. And you can see, I'm believing you can, that this thing is a lot blurry, is it not? Okay, the power of the smart object, okay? So you can see that if you convert your object, your layer that is, to a smart object, and you know you're going to be scaling stuff up and down because sometimes you want to make duplicates or whatever, and you got to go up and down, up and down. Well, every time you do that, let me just tell you what's happening behind the scene. When you make that image smaller, let me just do that one more time just for just to illustrate this. I'm gonna do Command T, hold on the Option key. When you scale this thing down, what you're doing in essence is throwing out pixels. That's the best way of explaining it, right? Because if you're making the image smaller, you got to get rid of the pixels to compensate for the smaller size. That makes sense? Am I making sense?
Mhm.
Okay, so you throw out pixels, but when you try to scale it back up, you can't add pixels that's not there. And that's why the image looked pixelated, because you scale something back up and there's no pixel to work with. Unless, notice what I said there, unless it was converted to a smart object. And in that case, it referenced that original file, that smart object file, and say, hey, this thing has been scaled back up. Let's use this original image and get it back to its full glory. So now when I scale this thing back up, let me commit it, and I'm gonna do Command T again. Hold on the Option key, pull it up again. Again, now both of them is blurry until I commit the commitment. Hit the Enter key, and voila. Okay. So notice again, the more time I scale it and make it small and larger, the worse it gets. Because every time I scale down, I'm throwing out pixels. If I scale down again, I'm throwing out pixels. But if it's a smart object, then you maintain its integrity, right? Its fidelity, call it whatever you will. And the image is just as good as it was originally. And it is. In fact, it is the original. Again, a smart object, so what tomorrow the story is, a smart object will preserve, the keyword there, the bitmap and vector data of that image, or that layer, to be more specific, right?
Right. That's what I was going to say. It's almost like it converts it to a vector or a vector shape or image, because it redraws it with the original every time. So
Exactly.
why would you not want to work with the smart objects? You really
Yeah,
don't.
exactly. If you know you're gonna be scaling something, you better convert it to a smart object, or you can get something like that, and that's not gonna get you a job right there. This picture on the right side, it's not gonna get you a job. Okay, so that's the first advantage, and one of the things I remember along the years, and this smart object been around a long time. So that's one of the advantages of using a smart object. Most people don't take advantage of that. Okay, so let's look at another example where smart object really come in handy. And that is when you're using comps, okay? Whenever you got a magazine comp or a TV comp or a billboard comp or cup, a mug or whatever, we'll do a couple of these tonight. If you convert that to a smart object, life is gonna be easy for you. Now, let me illustrate that. So I actually had two images of a billboard that I was gonna use. And I think I'm gonna use this one because it's bigger. And what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna convert this. I'm gonna create an object and convert it to a smart object before I transform that object. You'll see the reason or rationale for that in a minute. Okay, so let's do this. I'm gonna use my rectangular tool. And I'm gonna draw a rectangle about the size of this billboard that I want to match, right? And so I'm gonna just kind of eyeball it.
It's not really a rectangle, it's a polygon.
A polygon, okay. So I got that object right there. That's a shape. By the way, when you're making when you're using a rectangular tool, make sure you use the shape option. Otherwise, it's gonna create a path or pixels, right? Now you can use pixel as well, but here I created a shape because I want to easily manipulate, right? This is a vector shape, so I can manipulate it rather easily. Okay, now that I have this shape, I'm gonna convert it to a smart object. Again, so I'm gonna right click and do convert to smart object, just like we did before, right? Now there's a lot of ways to convert object to smart object, but this is probably the most preferred, the most common way of doing it. So now you see this is smart object is an embedded inside smart object as opposed to link or outside smart object, which we'll talk about maybe next month, and the cool thing that you can do with it. Now that I have that as a smart object, notice I have this as a rectangle, but I need to match match the perspective of that billboard right there. So what I'm going to do is hold on do Command T, because you always want to get a transformation mode, right? And then I'm gonna hold on to Command and Control key. And I'm gonna just map that to the surface of this billboard however I want. So I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna move this one down and kind of map it just like so. Okay. Now, when I commit this, it looks like and I could do Command Control T again if I want to fine tune it. Hold on, Command key. I may want to just fine tune it a little bit. You can do Command Control T again. But anyway, you want to get it to map whatever. If it's a book cover, magazine, you see this done all the time, by the way. You get these free comps that you could go online and get, and then you can put whatever you want. Now, remember, it was a rectangle that I used, and I converted that rectangle into a smart object. And the key word here is before I made the transformation. Okay, now let the magic begin. What I want to do is get inside of this smart object, put whatever I want, and get out and see what happens. So the way that you get inside of a smart object is if you double click on the smart object itself, it opens up another file. Notice this is another file that got opened, right? Now, normally I would name that the same as the object itself, but it's that rectangle 12 that I created, right? And
What
I
does
can add
that
whatever
tab say? It's too small to read. Could you
What was that?
read it to us? The tab that you just pointed to is too small to read. What is
Right
the
here?
name of
Okay,
this? Yeah, what does it say?
this basically says rectangle 12.psb, Photoshop
Thank
big.
you.
Okay,
Great.
and that is the smart object. Yeah, I double click on this little icon right now. I know it's real tiny because it's tiny on my screen.
What does that stand for? The PSB? What's
PSB,
the-
not yeah, that's the Photoshop. See, this is a where is it? This is a PSD. That's a
Yeah.
standard Photoshop file, right?
Yeah. What's
This is a
PSB?
PSB, Photoshop big. Okay, that's the smart
Photoshop
object
what?
itself. Big, BIG.
Big? Oh, okay. Okay. Big. Got it.
Okay, and so now that I'm inside of here, I can do whatever I want. I can put whatever I want in here, and when I get out, it's going to be reflected in that billboard in this file right here. Okay, so notice I got both of these open, right? Because when I double click on it, it opens this one, but this is my original file. This is the one that it's not actually, it's inside of this file, but I can get to it via the tab when I double click on it. So let's see what we can do. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to this model we have right here, and I'm gonna turn off these other ones and turn on this one. And I'm gonna select what I want to affect. So let me just select a portion of this image. And anytime you want to move something, use the move tool, right? And I'm gonna move this into that smart object. So I'm gonna just drag it, move it to the top, wait for it to change, and then push it down. And it's inside of that smart object. Okay. And I do it right? Yeah, I did. I think I did that right. Okay, so let me just move it down like so. Now let me close out of this and see if it's going to show up in here. Okay, if I did that right, it should show up in this file. So I'm going to save this file. I'm going to do close. And I'm going to say save. And when I go to this billboard, bam, notice you got placed on the billboard, right? Okay, and in perspective, and the key you got to remember is you create whatever shape you create, you want to do it before. I can't overemphasize that because I've made that mistake before. No pun intended there. Before you make any type of transformation, convert the shape first. I say that 10 times, and then modify it. Now let's go back in that smart object and add some other text. Okay, so I'm gonna double click again to get back into that smart object. You see it up here, and I'm gonna add some text here. So let's just add some text, and I'm gonna say, oh, that's really big. So if you have neck pain, call this number 800 fix neck. Okay. And I can make that maybe a little tad bit smaller so it could fit in there a little bit better. Okay. So that's what I have. Now notice again, I'm in the smart object and I hadn't saved. If I go back to my original image, it's not there yet because I didn't save the smart object. Okay. So now if I go back and save the smart object, I'm gonna close it and save it. And voila. Okay. Now, what if your client came back to you because you, John, you know, you always get clients, well, I want something else, right? What if they came back and said, I want to make changes? Well, you just go back in the smart object and make changes. Now, if you didn't use the smart object, what you would have done is, let me just turn this off. What you would have done is you would have had to drag the image of the girl right here, and I'm gonna drag that up to, is it this file I'm in, I believe? And turn her on. And then you would have to do a Control T, right? And then you would have to kind of, you know, do all kind of crazy stuff like that every time you wanted to map that to that billboard.
Right. And if you know the smart object and they go, oh, everything's great, we love it, but we want to use a different photo.
Right. You want to use a different
photo. I got to
photo.
remake the whole thing. Right.
I can put a different photo in there. No, you kind of stealing my thumb under there.
Oh, yeah, no, I was applauding you or whatever, but yeah.
So yeah, you could put it, well, let me do that real quick. Now this is for next month. So let me put in a different photo to show you that you can indeed do that. Somewhat double.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I just meant if you didn't have a smart object and they said change the photo, then you got to redo it all again. And you're just going to show us what you can do with the smart object.
Right. So watch what happens when I got a lot of things going on here. Okay, what I'm gonna do is double click on that smart object. What if I wanted to change that? Because the client said I want another picture, right? Well, I can just bring in another picture. Let me do file, open, and let me grab another model. Let's say I got another one in here, I think somewhere. Let me grab her, right? And so let me do I'm select just a portion of her, and I'm gonna drag it into that file and bring it down. And did it go in there? Hold on a sec. So that's the picture. Let me drag it, wait for it, and bring it down. And let me do Control D, because I'm not seeing it. Let me try that again. Let me try that again. I got the image. Oh, I didn't use the move tool. That's the reason why. Again, golden rule. You can ever say it 1,000 times, and I've made a mistake. Anytime you want to move something, you use what tool? The move tool. Now I wasn't using the move tool. I was moving the selection. Why did stupid thing not work in one of those moments? I know y'all never had that yet. I know y'all perfect, you know, but. Okay, so now I'm gonna use the move tool and not the selection tool. Very important to remember. So now when I drag and drop and go down, voila. Okay, and I'm gonna put her in here right there, like so. Now remember, I'm in the what? I'm in the smart object, right? So if I want to change that picture out, when I go here, it's gonna change to her once I save the smart object though. I hadn't saved the smart object just yet.
Hey, I was gonna ask you, is there a way to save it without closing it? I mean, if I just hit like Command or Control S, will that
Yeah.
save it? Or,
Oh, you talking about this file right here?
yeah,
Yeah, this is like any tab, you can right click on it and do close. I think you can do file
well, yeah,
save.
but I'm wondering, can I save it without closing it? So that
You
it'll
can-
show up in the smart object or in the, finish.
No, you got to close it because that's
Okay.
that's where you kind of get it transferred to the other file.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. So you have to close it, and then it says, "Oh, I need to update this file." It's kind of object link and embedding. Remember you did the old days of Microsoft when you save something outside, it referenced that file. Yeah, you have to save
Yeah.
it in order for it to show up in that
Yeah,
other
yeah.
file.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
So I'm gonna close it and let the magic begin. Voila. Okay. Notice it showed up in that file without much fuss. So we'll be looking more at that in upcoming videos and upcoming training next month. That's part 2. But I just want to kind of give you a little sneak preview of once you have smart object, you can swap out stuff rather easily. In fact, there's another technique, and I'm probably getting ahead of myself, that can save you a lot of time, John, that if you wanted to do it, if you go to double click and right, I'm gonna save that for later because that's gonna be a little bit too involved. But we'll show you how to update content easily using this command right here called let me see if I see it. I need a smart object. Yeah, I need to be on a smart object. link to file right here. I believe that's the one. And you can link to another file, replace content. That's what I'm looking for. So I can literally go in and replace that person with somebody else easily within an application. But we'll look at that next week or next month, I should say. So again, if I close this thing up, this smart object up, go back, and I didn't turn on my, I turned off a layer, I think. I turned off my text layer, okay? That's the reason why the text wasn't showing up. So if I close that again, and voila. Now let's do one more example of using a smart object. In the transformation refers to a lot of different things, right? Scaling, rotating, skewing, perspective, warp, all of those transformation. If you right click inside of an object, after you do Control T, you get a list of all the types of transformation. Let's do one more and we'll call it a night. Okay, I got this coffee mug right here, and I want to map some text or image, anything, onto the surface of it, right? Where it kind of curves around it, because I could use text, but that wouldn't look, if I just add text like this. If I try to put that on that, that's not coolness, okay? Because it's not wrapping around the curve of that cup. So we don't want to do that. So let's show you how to do that. And again, I'm gonna do this real quick. I'm gonna use my rectangular tool again. And it doesn't matter what color my smart object that I'm creating it is, it's because I'm gonna replace it. In fact, I'm gonna delete the color of the background from the smart object. But I got this shape that I created, and I'm gonna make it a smart object. And you guys know how to do that by now, right? You right click, do smart object. Now again, the key to remember is you want to make it a smart object before you do your transformation. So now I'm gonna do Command T, that's the transformation tool. And these are all the options that you can do: scale, rotate, skew, perspective, distort, right? But we want to do this one, right? And I'm gonna just kind of pull down to map, and then I'm gonna do this rather fast. It's not gonna be perfect, but it's gonna be what we call good enough for government work. And I say that often at work. Okay, so I'm gonna just kind of map this thing. It doesn't have to be perfect. for this training exercise, but you guys kind of get the drift of where I'm going with this. And I'm gonna just, just kind of like pull on it like a little clay putty, right? Like so. Now that I have that mapped on there, and I'm doing a real quick and dirty job, obviously I would spend a little bit more time cleaning that up, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna just do a little rough draft of that. So I got this thing on there. I made it a smart object. I transformed it, right? Now I want to get inside of that smart object to create some text. So I'm gonna double click on it. And I'm inside the smart object. And now I want to create some text, and I'm gonna turn this off because I don't need it, because I just need it to map around the shape. Now I'm gonna put in here have a great day. Okay, you guys kind of see where I'm going with that. Now notice I turned that off because red on red, you can't see. But more importantly, I don't need this layer turned on. Now watch what happens when I get outside of this smart object. Okay, again, right click close, and then I'm gonna save it. Watch what happens when I go back to where I'm at, that coffee cup. Voila. Okay, now again, I probably didn't do a good job. I can always do Control T. And if I need to fine tune my shape, whatever, I can pull on this thing however I want to clean it up. I did a rough job just for the sake of time, but you guys can see that I literally have control over whatever I want to do with this thing in real time. Now, the client comes back again and say, I want that to say something else. Well, I don't have to change all of this, right? If I get back in that smart object again, have I wouldn't want to say this, but have a bad day. Yeah, I wouldn't want that, right? But and then if I save that, that's the object. Which one is it? This right here. We're gonna close it, and then we'll save out. Don't do that. Oh, cancel. Cancel. I meant to hit cancel and I hit close. Okay. Let me do that again. So I'm gonna double click on this thing to go in here. Sorry, let me do this. Have a blessed day. That's better, right? Now, when I get out of this, again, this is that thing right there. I'm gonna do a close. Go back to that. Did I do the right one? I think I lost a connection somewhere. Let's see. Let me do that.
I think so. You did a close, but save never came up for you.
I don't know why that didn't happen. So let me figure out. Okay, so I have save a blessed day, and that's the file that opened, right? So close. There we go. I don't know why that didn't come in the second time, but there you have it. So you can see once you have your comp and your whatever transformation, it could be scale, it could be warp, it could be transformation, perspective, or whatever. Once you have that in place and the client comes back and say, I need to have a different text or a different image, I can put an image on this, right? Or whatever inside of the smart object. Okay, so the two things to remember is three things. One, you want to convert your object to a smart object. Okay, that's the first thing. Before, I can't overemphasize that, before you make any type of transformation. And then once you add whatever you want inside of that smart object and get out of it, then it's going to be reflected inside of this shape, even though you don't see that smart object in here, okay? Because it's behind the scene. So next month, we'll talk about some other examples of how to swap this stuff up, swap other stuff outside, how to do reflection. So if I had this being reflected down at the bottom here, if I change this, the text below, I don't have to recreate the reflection every time I change text. And it is all about time saving. And John knows what I'm talking about. A lot of smart object, not only is it flexible and non-destructive, the biggest thing for me is saving time. And I'm all about saving. If you want to, make me happy, I tell people I love to be happy. You can save yourself a boatload of time if you use smart objects. Okay.
Yeah.
So keep that in
Right there
mind.
with you.
It's
My
7
joke
o'clock.
is I do anything I can to save a nanosecond because those add up.
They add up. Believe
Right?
me,
Yeah.
they do. And smart object will save you not nanoseconds, because that's too that's small. Will save you hours. How you like that?
Perfect.
Not nanosecond. No, that's
Yeah.
childish.
Right.
Okay, will
A
save
whole
you
bunch of
hours of
nanoseconds.
time. Okay, so we looked at 3 examples, right? We looked at the first example, which was the reason why, if you're going to scale up and down, you want to make a smart object. We look at an example of a billboard. This could be a cover, magazine cover, a TV, anything that you could put something in, right? That in perspective. Now, if it's something square, you don't need to do that. But if it's perspective, it's going to save you time if you got to swap things out. And then we look at warp, which is another form of transformation. This is the same as what we did with the other one, with the billboard, but another form of transformation. Next month, we'll look at 3 additional examples of using smart objects to be smarter and to save time. So with that in mind, do anybody have any questions?
I don't. That's very cool. I'm already looking forward to next month. Yeah, those are awesome. Thank you, Cornelius.
Not a problem.
Yeah, here. Thank you.
Okay.
And I think you're right. I think have a blessed day is probably a better message than bad.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed bad too, just because that's funny on a cup. That's like sarcasm, or I don't know.
Mhm. It's intention grabbing.
Right.
Yeah. What's your cup say?
Unconventional.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
Okay.
smart objects. Now, by the way, you can notice this thing is movable, right? See, it's just sitting on top of that. So it's not now you could select both of these and do a merge, right? And then it becomes one image, right? If you wanted to. But this is just sitting on top of that image. That object is, you can, in fact, if you wanted to, I guess you can move it down there if you wanted to. But it's just sitting on top of that image. Just another layer in essence.
So you pick up the coffee cup and the text stays down on the table?
Now, say that again?
I said, if you pick up the coffee cup, does the text remain on the table?
Okay, well, let's look. Oh, that's because it's locked, huh? Let me double click to unlock it.
Yep. It's what you call leaving your blessings behind you.
Yeah. Now, again, I could select both of them. They both will move, right?
Yep.
Any question? Sherry, Sam? Anybody in the chat? I'm not looking at the chat. What's the chat?
I don't think there's any question. Sherry has just been leaving lots of notes about what you've said.
Good.
I've noticed that she's excellent that way every time.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I would hire her as a technical writer or something.
She does have a question. What did you call in the last example? Did you say warp?
Yeah, that's what that is. If you do a Command T, and then this option right here. It's kind of hard to see, but because it's dimmed out.
What does it? Can you read it to us? We can't see it.
Yeah, let me get another. Let me do another object.
Yeah, I didn't. That's awesome too. I didn't actually know about that. I mean, I
Command-
knew about
so when you do a Command
kind
T-
of free transform. I didn't know warp was in there.
So if you do a Command T and you right click, you have scale, which means to make larger, smaller. We know that, right? You got rotate. So if you get to the edge, you know how you can rotate things. Skew, again, you kind of pull those handles that like using the control key. Distort, I don't use that one. Perspective comes in handy because when you pull this, it kind of put it in different, you know, tilt to the left or the right. That's what we call perspective, right? On the bottom or top. So there's different types of transformation to change form. You know, like the little, you've seen the movies, right? Transformers, right? You had the little truck that transforms to the little the robots. I always you like to use that analogy on kids. And then again, if you want to cancel that transformation, again, you always have to commit the transformation. Once you do it, you got to commit it, because if you don't, if you do Command T and then you try to do other stuff, look, everything will be dimmed out. You got to commit before you can submit. There you go. That's fresh off the press there. Most everything is dimmed out until you commit that transformation. Okay, look, no charge for that. Y'all not being charged anyway.
The Austin Adobe User Group is free. So thank you for putting so much value in it and
Not a
teaching us
problem.
how to make lots of money using these skills.
Not a problem.
Okay.
All right, we look forward to part 2 next month.
Okay, and that'll be the second Thursday, which is which would be April. What date is that? April 11th.
April 11th.
6 p.m. Central. And if you go to the Austin Adobe User Group.com, you can see a recording of tonight's program in a few days. And if you go on Facebook and look for the Austin Adobe User Group, you'll also find we have a Facebook page there.
That's good.
Super. Well, thank you very much. Shall we close the meeting?
I wanted to see, John, when do you want to talk right now, or you want to talk later about, you know, seeing if you can?
Yeah,
fill
no,
in
I can talk right now.